Number one is optimal joint position. What this does is keep movement efficient and minimises or optimises stress on joints. So what we have to do is we have to make sure we're using the best position possible. When we're talking about core strength and stability, we're focusing on hips, spine and shoulders. So we need to get those joints into first of all, the healthiest position possible and the healthiest state possible, and then we can start layering on our fitness on top. Number one is optimal joint position. Now what this does is this makes movement efficient and it optimizes stress on the tissues. So if we use the kettlebell swing as an example, so again when I come down into this position and I start the swing, I want to be putting in the minimal amount of effort but getting the maximum from it. Now, if I was doing that movement and I was coming into this position, I can't get the leverage than if I've got stiffness through here and my hips working effectively. So the position of my spine and the position of my, see, as soon as I lose it, I lose the swing. So it's suboptimal with regards to how I'm using energy, because muscles are generating energy, and if I'm not in the right position, I can't use that energy because it's leaking out of the bend in the spine because of the weakness there. So all that energy is getting leaked out. So I need to keep my spine in position to be able to do it. Now when it comes to core training, it might not mean doing a load of swings. It might mean planks, side planks, chops, rotations, building up the hips with bridges and hip thrusts, so on and so forth. So we're basically optimizing that whole area. What's also happening when I do it is if I go into a suboptimal position, like that rounded spine, I'm putting stress on my spine. I'm putting unnecessary and excessive stresses on my spine. So I need to essentially take those out so I can minimize the stress on the joint, but maximize the output. So we need to start using optimal joint positions. Number two is offsetting fatigue. Now, what this basically means is endurance. So I've talked about core strength and stability. Now, if we want to continue that journey, we need a foundation of endurance to start with. So when it's at beginner's levels, and in some respects, when it comes to advanced levels, so people might be able to do a lot of movement, but they break down very quickly. So again, what they've got is possibly good strength and stability, but very poor endurance to continue that going over a prolonged period of time, which is how our core works. It's much more effective when it comes to endurance, and then we layer the core strength and stability on top. Now, when it comes to core endurance, it's essentially what we're looking at are planks, side planks, bridges, and just building that fundamental endurance over a long period of time. So we could also add in sort of chops, so it would be sort of chopping movements. We could add swinging movements in with kettlebells, so on and so forth. But what we're looking to do is keep the weight lighter, maintain the joint position, that optimal joint position, so we minimize the stresses, and we build the ability for the joints to hold those positions. If we can build that ability for them to hold them, we can start layering on the weight, which is then going to enhance the strength of the torso as well. But we need to start with slightly lighter weights, build the stability, build the coordination, build the quality movement patterns, build the smoothness of movement, and then start focusing on adding on the weight on top. So when we're talking about beginner, I mean intermediate, advanced, if you're a beginner, you're probably going to need to start there anyway. Start on the lighter end, build the endurance, build up your capacity to work for longer. If you're at the intermediate and advanced level, but you may be competent at movement, you may be relatively strong, but you break down very quickly. What we need to do is build that endurance, again, regress back to lighter, get those movement patterns honed in that quality position, but doing it over a period of time. Once we can do it over a period of time, we then layer on the weights just like the beginner would, and then we would start to build, first of all, the endurance, and then on top of that, the strength and the stability. Number three is to move in all planes. What that basically means, our body moves in essentially three directions: forwards and back, side to side, and rotation in both directions. That's what we need our exercise programs to do for us. So when it comes to exercise, we need to choose our exercises accordingly. So for example, if I just use this kettlebell, so first exercise, forwards and back. If we were to use a kettlebell swing. Now this could be any forwards and back exercise. It could be a squat. So it could be a squat. It could be a swing. Could be RDL. Could be walking lunge. Could be so many things. But essentially, it's that movement forwards and back. So we need it to include that forwards and back movement, because that's doing the muscles on the back of the body, and in some respects, on the front of the body as well. So that would be exercise number 1. Number 2, sideways movement. I'm going to use, again, it's a sort of whole body-ish movement, but basically, I come into this wide stance. Basically, I'm just side lunging. So I've got here, I'm going to swap hands. There's an element of rotation to it, because I'm using the rotation of my shoulders as I go up and down, but essentially the movement is side to side. This could also be bands around the feet, stepping to the side, could be just standard side lunges, whatever it needs to be. Could even be a front raise if we needed it to be. Then the final one is rotation. So again, this might be something like an atlas swing. So again, what I'm doing is I'm coming up here, again I'm rotating through like so. This could also be some sort of chopping movement, reverse chopping movement, so on and so forth. But essentially what we're looking for, forwards and back, side to side, rotation. What's this doing? This is building the torso all the way around. If we want to come down into a plank, we could start here and we could rotate up to here. So we've got forwards and, well, we've got the sort of forward front anterior muscles in the plank. We've got an element of rotation. We then start working the side of the muscles. So essentially what we need our programs to do is work in those 3 planes. How we do that, there is some logic to it, there is some structure to it, but essentially we're looking for 3 types of exercises: forwards and back, side to side, and rotation. Number 4 is improving joint awareness. Now this is a very simple concept. It's essentially learning, first of all, how your body moves, and then when you are moving, what's your body doing? Now, when I talk about it in sort of a core skills perspective. So this is one of the elements that everybody needs, is the ability to move and coordinate their movement and be aware of what their body's doing. So how I do this is I work, in some respects, sort of joint by joint. So for example, if we go to the most remedial part, which would be in here and just lifting one arm. So I'm just lifting, right, I know my arm can go that much further. Now if I'm setting the parameter that I want to lift my arm as high up as I can and keep my shoulders level, what I've got to do is lift to there, because as soon as I do that, then I come up. So it's being aware of how far your body can move, or how far my arm can move without that rotation. So when we talk about it in what we've done so far with regards to exercise technique, is what's my body doing as I'm doing the exercise? So if we take a swing, for example, are my hips going back and forwards, like so, or am I doing more of a squat movement to swing? The more efficient way is to do it from the hips. The less efficient way is to do it from the knees. But am I aware of that? So it's very simple. When we go into certain exercises, we need to be aware of what our body's doing. If we're using big exercises, like a chop, for example, again, am I dragging it down, because it's a heavy weight, am I dragging it down and then sort of using the arms afterwards, or am I trying to pull down with the arms and not really access the core? So it's just understanding what muscles are working when, but what muscles should be working and when, and trying to get our muscles working when they should be working. So understanding that joint awareness as we go through not only simple movements, but building through into more complex movements as well. And then number 5 is balancing force, endurance, and stability. So strength, endurance, and stability, essentially. So what we need to be able to do is have that foundation of endurance, build the stability on top of that with good quality movement, coordinated movement, and then add the force on top. Because what can happen is, as I've mentioned, people can become very strong and they're very top heavy. So they've got a lot of strength, but they break down very quickly. So their stability can break down and their endurance can break down very quickly. So they've got sort of an inverted pyramid, like so. What we want to create is that. So it's readdressing that balance, building up their endurance so they can maintain the stability of the good quality movement, because movement is the timing of muscles, the smoothness of that movement, and the timing of the muscles. So what we need to be able to do is build up the endurance first. As we're doing that, we're kind of layering stability in because we're improving the quality of movement as well. And then we add the strength on top. So it's keeping that in balance rather than throwing yourself in at the deep end, trying to go heavier and heavier and heavier, getting top heavy. Then your stability breaks down because your endurance isn't there. And then what we end up with is poor movement, excessive stress on joints, and then essentially that's ending in an injury. So that is the 5 key components of better core strength and stability. If you want to find out more about that, if you want to start doing structured programs where you can build from a beginner's level all the way up into intermediate and advanced, click the link below, go through my core strength and stability workouts and programs, and get yourself started with them. So many thanks for watching. My name is Chris from Chris of Whole Training. I'll speak to you in the next tutorial.